Hello my dear friends, you're in the military with summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, and first we'll discuss massive attacks. According to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, during the night between the 3rd and the 4th of June of 2026, the Ukrainians used 272 drones to attack the territory of Russia, but as of the morning of the 1st of June of 2026, we haven't received anything that can confirm that the Ukrainians managed to deal damage. But I would like to remind you that yesterday the Ukrainians attacked the city of St. Petersburg, and we received lots of videos yesterday about the situation. If you remember, the Ukrainians were using hundreds of drones to attack Navy fleet, the Navy forces of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, and the port and fuel infrastructure. And this morning, on the 4th of June of 2026, we received first fresh satellite pictures where we can see the consequences of attack. For example, in this picture we can see the Russian ship, the Russian Boyki military ship that was attacked by the Ukrainians. And as you can see, according to this picture, firefighters are trying to extinguish the fire. So which means that the ship most likely was damaged but wasn't destroyed, and most likely the Russians will be able to repair it. Probably it will take more time for Russians than expected, but one thing is clear, that the ship wasn't destroyed. As for the port infrastructure and as for the Petersburg oil terminal, we have more satellite pictures, and according to these pictures we see that indeed during the previous day the Ukrainians managed to hit several oil tanks, but the Ukrainians haven't to destroy the entire port infrastructure. According to these pictures we can say that up to 6 or 7 oil tanks were damaged or destroyed. Few more fresh satellite pictures were published by pro-Ukrainian sources about the results of Ukraine's attack. If you remember, before the massive attack, the Ukrainians also attacked the settlement of Saratov, and today pro-Ukrainian sources published these satellite pictures where we can see that as a result of the previous attack, also several tanks, oil tanks, were damaged. And the same situation in the area of the Ilinski oil refinery. The pro-Ukrainian sources published several satellite pictures where we can see that as a result of attack that took place 2 days ago, the Ukrainians also managed to damage and to destroy up to 2 or 3 oil tanks. The Russians during the previous night also attacked the territory of Ukraine using hundreds of drones, and according to information we have, the Russians used 294 drones to attack the territory of Ukraine, and as of this number, this morning we received lots of updates and pictures on this matter. Probably the Russians were planning to use even more missiles and drones to attack the territory of Ukraine, but the Russians couldn't do this because the Mark Rutte air defense system was located on the territory of the city of Kiev, and while the Mark Rutte air defense system was located in Kiev, Zelensky was making lots of very interesting and sometimes insult statements. Russia can produce up to 120 ballistic missiles per month. This is the greatest threat we are currently facing. These are the words of the President of Ukraine, Zelensky. But Mark Rutte stated that the United States of America is doing what it can. And obviously, and when the Mark Rutte air defense system left the territory of Ukraine, the Russians intensified their massive attacks, and once again, according to the Minister of Defense of Ukraine, 294 drones were used by Russians, and according to videos we received this morning, the Russians were attacking objects of energy infrastructure and warehouses. According to media, the Russians attacked an oil base in the area of the settlement by the name of Pereslavskaya. So this oil base was destroyed, and we have these pictures published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and here we can see how firefighters were trying to extinguish the fire in this area. Another important another important area that was attacked by Russians is the city of Dnipro and the Dnipro agglomeration. According to information we have, these two big warehouses were completely reduced to ruins or partially damaged by Russians. So let's discuss this in details, and these are the videos that were published by pro-Ukrainian sources this morning on the 4th of June of 2026, and here we can see a big building that was damaged and probably destroyed as a result of the Russian drones attack. And in this picture we can see black smoke over this construction right after the Russian attack, and here we can see the same black smoke but probably from another angle. Of course, the Ukrainians sent their firefighters with the purpose to stabilize the situation, but it seems that the firefighters came too late. This object of logistic infrastructure was significantly damaged, and according to information we have, according to pro-Russian sources, the Ukrainians were using this warehouse as a place where the Ukrainians were keeping missiles or drones. Another important building was destroyed right in front of this construction. We're talking about this warehouse, and here we have the same story. Here we have black smoke over the construction. The Russians attacked this logistic hub, and we see how firefighters of Ukraine were trying to stabilize the situation and to extinguish the fire in this area. This warehouse was also destroyed. Probably both buildings were significantly damaged. Probably it's not correct to say that they were destroyed, but probably the Russians will continue attacking these territories. And as you can see, and most likely the Ukrainians were using these two warehouses not just for military purposes but also for civilian purposes as well. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous 12 hours we received lots of very important updates, and first we're going to talk about the Zaporizhzhia direction, where the Russians are taking the initiatives in their hands. According to information we have, after the Ukrainian counteroffensive operation through the western Zaporizhzhia direction, the Russians managed to regroup themselves, and now the Russians began their own counteroffensive. And as a result of the Russian counteroffensive operation, the armed forces of the Russian Federation managed to restore control over the territories they lost. For example, we received a video from the more southern and the central parts of the settlement of Stepnogorsk, and here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians with FPV drones in this area. Based on this video, we have adjusted the map, and we came to the conclusion that now the Russians are trying to restore control over the lost positions on the territory of this settlement. Furthermore, the Russians are trying to improve their positions once again through the settlement of Primorskaya. Based on the video published by pro-Ukrainian sources, we have adjusted the map. So this is the situation on the ground. Now the Ukrainians are trying to slow down the Russians and not allow the Russians to recapture the territories they lost. As for the Orekhov direction, during the previous 12 hours, we received lots of very interesting updates to the east of the settlement. As you can see, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. This is the situation by the end of the 2nd of June, this is the end of the 3rd of June, and this is the beginning of the 4th of June of 2026. The Russians of the group of forces east continue offensive operation further in the direction of this dense network of the fortifications. The Russians are tasked to answer these territories and then to continue offensive operation further. Furthermore, we received a video published from the city of Mala Takhmachka, and in this video we can see how the Ukrainians were attacking Russians in this area, which means that most likely the Russians once again entered the settlement of Mala Takhmachka with the purpose to begin a major offensive operation in the direction of the city of Orekhov as well. And probably the most important updates are coming from the settlement of HULIAIPILSKE. As you can see, according to the map has been adjusted. We have added additional infiltration zone, but telling the truth, right before we started making this video, pro-Russian sources published a video confirming that the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, the group of forces east, as a result of clashes, established complete control over the settlement. And before the next video we will adjust the map and we will color all these territories under complete Russian control. So the last settlement of the strongest defense belt of the armed forces Ukraine in the Zaporizhzhia direction has fallen, and now the Russians, with full capacity and in full strength, will continue offensive operation further towards the villages of Novostepnohirsk and Yegorovka. So now we can clearly say that the battle for the city of Orekhov and the Orekhov agglomeration begins, and the Russians of the group of forces east and the Russians of the group of forces Dnipro are tasked to take these territories under complete control before winter, and during the winter period of time most likely we'll start receiving the first updates about the clashes on the territory of the city of Zaporizhzhia. And probably this is the reason why the President of Ukraine Zelensky is calling his generals and Western countries to create the situation when possible to finish the conflict before winter comes, because obviously the next winter could be very, very difficult when talking about situation with energy and so on. Also, the Russians, according to information we have of the group of forces east, improved their positions to the west of Vozdvizhovka. The Russians continue offensive operation further in the western direction towards the villages of Lesnoye, Danilovka and Lyubitskaya. So the group of forces east continue advancing further in the western direction. The Ukrainians are trying to slow down the Russians, but the summer military campaign just begins. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Dnipro direction. These days, almost every single day, we receive changes in this area, and basically we add additional gray zone or contested area. That means that the Russians continue advancing, and according to the latest changes we've received during the previous 24 hours, the Russians improved their positions along M30 road, and the Russians improved their positions to the northwest of the settlement of Vasilievka. The battle for the settlement of Mirny begins. As for the battle for the settlement of Sergeyevka, the battle is ahead of us. But the Russians are advancing right exactly in this direction. It seems that the Russians, before the beginning of the battle of Dnipro, are tasked to improve their positions as deep as possible in the northwestern direction, and first to take under complete control these territories. If Russians are able to do this, of course, this can create a threat for the forces of the armed forces Ukraine along TO406 road that goes in the direction of Dnipro, and this breakthrough can lead to unpredictable consequences to the armed forces Ukraine who are currently located on the territory of Dnipro. It's very difficult to say what are the exact plans of Russians regarding the settlement of Dnipro for the summer military campaign. Probably the Russians will continue advancing, but this direction is not the primary direction for Russians. As for the city of Konstantinovka, during the previous night, we haven't received anything about the situation in this area. As for the Kramatorsk-Slaviansk direction, during the previous night, we received several updates. The Russians improved their positions on the territory of the city of Liman. This video was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and in this video, we can see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians through the settlements. So, which means that the Russians have improved their positions just a bit, but they improved their positions. And I would like to remind you that according to the chief of the general staff of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, 2 weeks ago the Russians controlled up to 85% of the settlement of Liman, but we still haven't found this information on the maps of any mapper. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation through the northern directions. The Russians continue their offensive operation to the line Grigorovka-Kolodezna. These are the changes on the ground between the dates. The Russians launched a counteroffensive operation in this area, and as a result of clashes during the previous 2-3 days, the Russians improved their positions significantly and approached the settlements of Grigorovka and Obuchovka. The Russians are still very far from this line, and they will continue advancing further. As for the Vovchansk direction, the Russians also improved their positions along the river of Vovcha. As you can see, there are still very heavy clashes. The Ukrainians still hold their positions along the river, and the Ukrainians are not retreating. But from the other side, we see that the Russians continue tightening the noose around positions of the armed forces of Ukraine in Varvarovka, Nikolaevka, Nesterno, and Shabelne. In coming 2-3 weeks, most likely these territories would be colored completely under control of Russians. As for the northern Sumy direction, the Russians also improved their positions in the direction of the settlement of Ulanova. These are the changes on the ground, and according to the group of forces north, currently there are very heavy clashes for the settlement of Bachevsk. Pro-Russian sources stated that the Russians are already on the territory of this village, and according to the latest changes, as you can see, the Russians also approached the settlement of Ulanova, and the clashes for the settlement of Ulanova are also about to start. We see that the Russians continue offensive operation in this area, and the Russians are not reducing the level of pressure in this area, which means that the settlement of Glukhov is probably a primary target for Russians, and they will continue advancing in this area as well. And that's it for the short video. The Military Summary channel remains to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.